Okay, it's March 26, 2026, and I really enjoyed this conversation that I had the other day with my comrade Sibi, who I had just met. A mutual friend put us together. I want to thank that person for doing that, because this was a enlightening conversation, because I have holes in my knowledge of history. I mean, I don't know everything about African history, Latin American history, or South American history, I would say. Asian history. And why is that? Because I grew up in America, and we do a great job of telling an Anglo sort of history first, and then all other history is exterior. And you have to, if you're interested, why would you be interested? At least the culture tells you that. Then you have to do your own research. So, that's what I try to do. And I talked to Sibi. Sibi is from Kenya. He's a member of CPM-K, Communist Party Marxist Kenya. And very knowledgeable dude. I want to talk to him again because yes, I read a little bit to prepare for talking with him, but I left with more questions after the fact, after the editing process. So hopefully we can have Sibi back on. And yeah, let me just detail a little bit what we'll be talking about today, and then just throw you right into the conversation. We talked about a lot of things. We talked about how Kenya is trying to build a people's party, a CPM-K, what their role has been in organizing the working class people and the regular people, the peasantry, all peoples of Kenya that are under the boot of their elite, but their elite are controlled by outside powers, mainly the U.S. imperialist bourgeoisie. I talk about the American imperialist bourgeoisie almost every single episode. So that should be main focus as for our American audience, because that's what we have control over right now, or theoretically we could have control over. So he puts me on to a lot of things I had not heard about, like the Zionist project in Kenya. We talk about the Kenyan police's role in being sent to Haiti. We talk about the IMF's role as a neo-colonial tool in Kenya and Africa as a whole as well, and also in different many different countries around the world, Latin America, Asia, everywhere, Europe. And we talk about China. We talk about France's role. We talk about I don't want to spoil it too much, so please, if you're listening, spread this with somebody who you think is willing to listen. And one of the things that I've been focused on locally, just to really finish this, is that we should organize for a mass day of action, a general strike. And May 1st is coming up, May Day. Historically, a very significant day in union strike history and strike history in general. This May Day could be historic, and could send a message, and it could lead to even bigger strike action in this country. And so a lot of people are joining in. I think we need to spread that message, and get as many people on board to not go to school, not go to work, not purchase anything on May 1st, and send a message every which way that, we're done with this, American imperialist capitalism, control. We need to take control. And so this is one of those building steps towards that. I'm convinced of that. I mean, I'm not saying that it's the end all be all. It's one of the steps, but is something concrete that we can all focus on. May 1st, May Day. So now here's the conversation with Comrade Sibi. Sibi, this could be more of a discussion because I did a lot of reading the last few days when I had the time off work about Kenya and the politics of Kenya and some of the things that you and suggested that I read. Because I wasn't up to date. I wasn't really up to date with your history over there. So, but I did read about the 2024 finance bill protests and all that. But before we even get into that, how are you doing in Kenya in terms of your organizing and also what's the political climate looking like right now in Kenya?
So I think I'll begin with the second question, because the second question will more or less answer the first. The political climate, in the sense of the geopolitical situation and the politics globally, and also the internal politics. Of course, they have a relationship. First, I'd want to talk about the geopolitical situation. Kenya within the region exists as a satellite for imperialism. So Kenya is a satellite for the imperialist bourgeoisie, particularly the American imperialist bourgeoisie. And recently, as we are all aware, Kenya military personnel that were kicked out in the Sahel. So based on that, you can confidently say that the Kenyan state is in league also with French imperialism. Yes, so to give you the gist of how Kenya operates in the region, it is basically a garrison state that is used to destabilize the entire region. Say, for example, the balkanization of Somalia. Kenya actively has troops deployed in southern Somalia and is leading in the arming, of course, as a satellite, not directly, leading in the arming, funding and training of Jubaland forces, which is, you could say, more or less a secession movement, a separatist movement, because the Somali is now being balkanized into like seven, I think there's seven. So it's like a federal system is imposed on them by imperialism, of course. And Kenya is the main garrison state. It's like Kenya is the garrison state for this imperialism. Of course, there's many actors like the Turkish. Yeah, so it's a complex geopolitical web. Now, up north, when you go to Sudan, the ongoing genocide with the RSF, the Kenyan state is best friends with the RSF. In fact, Hemedi Dagalo, who is the leader of RSF, has been hosted by the Kenyan president here to declare a parallel government from the Sudanese government. So Kenya also provides the RSF with safe money routes and also routes to smuggle the gold out of Sudan and to now send it to the UAE. Which other theater of conflict is in the region? And even historically, Kenya provided the airport in Nairobi. It's the biggest airport in the region to to the Israelis as a base when they invaded Uganda. That was when the PFLP, back in the day when they used to hijack airliners as a means to have political leverage over the Zionist regime.
Mm-hmm.
So Kenya is very much in league with imperialism, even with Israeli imperialism.
Yeah.
So geopolitically, Kenya is situated strategically as a client satellite for imperialism. Now, locally, the situation, of course, is also not for the poor majority. The situation is growing tougher by the day, marked by unemployment, which is rampant, police brutality. Of course, when the, the, the violence through the economic means, which precedes the violence of the oppressed, when it takes center stage, it produces its own negation, which is now the violence, the revolutionary violence of the oppressed majority, which comes to answer the violence of the state. Now when the people rise, of course, they're met with the brutality of the state. Now the political situation, if we, uh, if if we go into the particularities, um, it is it is very complex, and again not very complex. The consciousness of the masses is that they do not want the current regime. They're very clear on that, but they've reached, their consciousness is still at electoralism to usher in a new democratic government that will uphold their bourgeois democratic rights. Yeah, so basically that's um, me summing up Kenya in a very shallow way. I think I can give you a comprehensive rundown if you also go into the particularities and ask me very direct and particular questions. Yeah.
Well, off of that, I wanted to kind of pick your brain as to, you mentioned the consciousness of the masses in Kenya. In regard to, Kenya being part of the satellite of U.S. imperialism, how do you see your average Kenyan understanding that? Do you feel like the average person understands the U.S. Kenya's role as sort of subservient to the U.S. imperialism, and also other, imperialist, imperialist actors in the region like Israel and UAE and all that? Do you feel like the average person is in tune with that understanding, or is more propagandized by the current government to maybe not even put mind to that?
Um, the consciousness of the average Kenyan, of course, is a very backward consciousness. Backward in the sense that they're dominated by the hegemonic grip of bourgeois ideology. Of course, if the average Kenyan had a very progressive consciousness in the sense that they had the capability of discernment, that they could discern uh, imperialist ploy and actual progressive movements and progressive politics, of course, the status quo would be shaken because in my party they say that the insurrection of ideas precedes the insurrection of arms. So in any case, the average Kenyan has these ideas. That means that they've already have had the insurrection of ideas, and what is remaining is only the insurrection of arms. So of course, the average Kenyan is dominated heavily by bourgeois ideas. So the average Kenyan struggles to discern um, American imperialism, also struggle to discern the Zionist lobby. There's a very big Zionist lobby in the country, apparently. Even the Zionists, they have a settler project. There's a kibbutz in Kenya, actually. A very big one. They have like 600 acres.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and how they got it was very scandalous. They even made a dam collapse. So there was floods that murdered a lot of people and displaced them.
Wow.
It's same displacement agenda that they have in the occupied territories in Palestine. So in occupied Palestine, it's very overt. Here, it's in the embryonic stage, so it's very, very covert. But it's the same expansionist agenda. How did the Nazis call it? That word in German that translates to living space. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
I keep forgetting the name, but I know you get the gist of what I'm saying.
Yes, I do. Yeah. Well, I had heard about the Zionist mission in Somalia, the Somaliland sort of project, but I didn't hear about the Kenyan project. You're saying it's more covert. What else can you say about that?
What else can I say about the Zionist lobby in the country?
Yes.
Yeah. So the Zionist lobby in the country is it takes the character of a Judeo-Christian. It's a Judeo-Christian rhetoric, essentially Christian Zionism. So the Christian masses, Kenya is heavily Christian. It has a very big Muslim population also, but it's majority Christian. And the Christianity in Kenya, if you do a keen analysis, you come to realize that it is a very chauvinistic, right-wing form of Christianity, because the evangelicals from America, they have a lot of missions in Kenya, so there's a lot of their branches here. Their branches in Kenya. So Christianity in this country takes a very chauvinistic character. So the propaganda used by the Zionist lobbies of the purity of the Holy Land and the right of the Israelis to the Palestinian land. So you have a lot of Kenyan Christians inadvertently supporting the Zionist agenda. So that's the propaganda wing of the Zionist lobby in the country. The Christians, especially the evangelicals.
How do you see this this war between the U.S., Israel, Iran, and some other states affecting Kenya per se? Because I know you're way closer to it than we are over here. So.
In all honesty, the effects of the war, if you look at it not strategically, if you look at it now, the effects are not yet very immediate, and of course, because of that very reason, the majority of us would think that because of the proximity, the majority of us will tend to think that the effects of the war are very, very far from us. But in actual sense, the proximity is very, very close. In fact, with the closure of the Hormuz Strait, the oil prices would obviously shoot very high, and economically, the country will start feeling the consequences and repercussions of the, the American and Zionist aggression against the sovereignty of Iran. The, the effects of the closure of the Hormuz Strait have not yet um, are not yet felt currently, but of course, they are expected. And in any case, it becomes a war. It becomes a war of attrition, and it spills over in the region. We know what side the Kenyan state will fight on, because even Kenya was designated, I think, some 2 years back, a non-NATO ally of America. So we could see we could see we could see the alliances that the Kenyan state, the Comprador state in Kenya, could form in that war. And because the war is in its embryonic stages, so we can only foresee how it can, depending on a lot of variables, of course. Yes, but we know what side the Kenyan Comprador state is supporting.
In terms of the Communist Party, Marxist Kenya, you said that you were a member.
Yeah, member. Carrying member.
How do you see the CPM-K's role in terms of organizing the 2024 protests and also the subsequent protest movements? Has it played like a leading role or auxiliary role, or?
No, in fact, the party did not play a leading role. It was a very spontaneous uprising, a very spontaneous and organic uprising in response to a very punitive bill that was passed in Parliament against the will of majority Kenyans. At the time in 2024, because of the intensity of the protest, it was never ratified and assented into law. But the government, they're very clever and they're very cunning. Over time, they passed small clauses until all of it was assented into law. But the protests, they were very, very organic. They arose in response to that punitive bill, and the bill was a textbook structural adjustment program. You could, if you read it and you've read any SAP from the past, you could tell that it was drafted in Washington and not in Nairobi. Now, regarding the subsequent protest, the party has been involved a lot in organizing, because the party of the toiling majority will always capitalize on spontaneity and the anger of the masses to try to draw to try to channel their anger, their rightful anger, and to play a part in the development and in the increasing of their political consciousness and their working class consciousness. So the initial one was a very organic and spontaneous one, but the subsequent protests, the party has been very, very much involved alongside other progressive organizations within the country. Because the party is not the only left formation in the country.
How do you see the party growing since 2024? Has you seen a big uptick in the growth? And also, when did the party even originate? Because I don't know the history of the party.
Yes. To answer the first question, the party has indeed qualitatively and quantitatively had an uptick, especially qualitatively. Now, regarding the origins of the party, The party has a has a has a long history. Many people will know the party from 2019 when the Social Democratic Party uh, changed its name and its character to the Communist Party of Kenya. To go back, the party was founded in 1992. So 1992 was the culmination of a political struggle by the old left, which led to the repeal of a clause in the old constitution. It was called the Section 2. The Section 2A of the old constitution banned all political activity and restricted the register of political parties only registered one party, and that was the ruling party at the time. It was called KANU. So the country was plunged into a 21-year dictatorship under the KANU regime led by some despot called Moi. He died. So during that period, the old left organized under the Workers' Party of Kenya, then the December 12th movement, then the Kenya movement. All of these were underground organizations that were banned. Now, with the repeal of the Section 2A, the constitution allows the formation of multiple political parties, but communist activity was still suppressed. A communist party could not be formed. I keep forgetting the name of this law, but this law against communist activity was again repealed in 2010 in a new constitution because there was a referendum, and in 2010 the country got a new constitution. But when we got a new constitution, the ruling comprador elite still frustrated the formation of the Communist Party. So the Communist Party existed since 1992. The Communist Party existed since the British were here under different names. But substantively, in 1992, with the formation of the SDP as the cover for the Communist Party, because communist organizing was illegal. So in 2010, with the repeal of the Communist Suppression Act, the register of political parties still frustrated the formation of the Communist Party, and that process went on for 9 years until 2019, when the government yielded, and now the SDP changed its character to the Communist Party of Kenya. Qualitatively, the Communist Party of Kenya, after a split, became the Communist Party Marxist Kenya, to distance itself from opportunism from the previous leadership, which went into an alliance with the current government in the run-up to the recent elections we had in 2022. Yeah.
When you talk to your average working class person, to try to organize them into the party or into more political activism, what type of reactions do you get to the word communism or socialism? Because I know in my country, that it's heavily propagandized, and the second you use those words, the conversation for a lot of people stops. So
yeah, for sure. In your country, the word communist is a pejorative. It's almost like saying Nazi. It's almost funny sometimes. I see memes.
Yeah.
But now in my country, the context is different. Kenya is a very multilingual country, so I wouldn't necessarily use the word socialism or communism.
Oh, okay.
I would more or less explain. But the Red Scare propaganda and the anti-communist hysteria is so pervasive. It's so pervasive to the extent that it even dominates, even in this region. When you now meet intellectuals and you mention the word communism, to them it's a pejorative. because they've internalized the Red Scare propaganda from America. But now, to the working masses, you wouldn't necessarily use the word communism when you're talking to them. You meet them where they are. Kenya is a very multilingual country. Our lingua franca is not even English. English is not even my first or second language. So I would use another language, but the, the American propaganda is not in the language that I would use, though, so I would get a different response.
Yeah.
Not a necessarily, they wouldn't consider it a pejorative. For the most backward sections of the working class, they would see it as as a utopia. And for the advanced sections of the toiling majority, they would see that it is something that could be achieved within their lifetimes.
No, yeah, I agree with you in terms of the language and you don't necessarily start with saying, oh well, communism, socialism. You start with the ideas and the issues that affect your everyday people. I mean, that's what the isms are all about. They fight for those things, and usually when people hear the ideas, they love the ideas. They just think, well, how do we get there? How do we get there? And what are some sort of, I know that the government presents an immense roadblock and sort of because of U.S. imperialism, they sort of control the government. But what are some practical steps that the CPM-K is taking to sort of build political power in the country?
Yeah. So the party has its strategy and its tactic. Of course, as a tactic, the party will participate in the bourgeois processes. The bourgeois processes, like the electoral processes, to try and win electoral seats and even advance trade union struggle uh, to make it a site to popularize our ideas. But of course, the strategy and the line of the party is the working towards the national democratic revolution. The national democratic revolution, in essence, which is an alliance of all progressive forces and classes against the primary enemy of the Kenyan working class and the peasants, which is the imperialist bourgeoisie, imperialism, which is mediated by the bureaucratic and comprador capitalist class. So that is the strategy of the party, and as a tactic, the party will engage in the bourgeois processes, the trade union struggle, the electoral struggle. So the party does a lot of organizing, especially in the trade union struggle, organizing the dock workers, the workers in the EPZs. The EPZs are basically sweatshops. These kind of sweatshops that produce finished goods that are not consumed here. They are shipped abroad. So the manufacturing and the processing is moved here because of the cheap labor and the direct access of the raw materials. So the party organizes workers along those lines. The party will also organize the intellectuals, that is the students, the dissenting voices in academia. Yeah. And the party is most popular among the peasants because of the the peasant organizations that are very thriving under the ban of the party. In the rural areas, Kenya exists as in character exists as a neo-colonial and semi-feudal country where majority of the population, I believe about 72%, is still languishing in the backwardness of rural semi-feudal relations.
Mm.
Yeah. So the country is majority rural. Uh, I think that is the reality of most countries in the peripheral of the peripheral countries in the global south. I think the reality is that there are majority rural and a small urban population in comparison.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that because I did see some statistics that 70% lived in rural areas compared to the 30% in urban areas, and that that presents a problem in terms of access to healthcare, education, political power. I'm sure. Um, Even organizing, on a mass scale is very difficult. I'm sure. Um, did the party, start in the urban areas and then try to move into the rural areas and organize in the rural areas, or vice versa?
Um, the struggle in the rural struggle and the urban struggle have an interlinked relationship, but the party is the party of the working class. That is the urban proletariat. The urban proletariat are the class of the future, so they must lead. So the party started from the urban areas, but the conditions of the peripheral countries are such that, of course, you can never disregard the majority of the suffering and the toil. You cannot disregard the the toiling majority, which are not the proletariat, they're the peasantry. The peasantry, the rural proletariat. Even in the rural setting, the proletariat can be the peasantry can be stratified. You have the big landlords in the rural areas. They're of course they're peasants. They are rural. You have the middle peasants who have land, but the land is just for subsistence, not for big production. Now you have also the landless peasants, which you classify as the rural proletariat. And even in the urban areas, the majority in the urban areas are not the proletariat. The structural adjustment programs of IMF and World Bank in the 80s pushed a lot of Kenyans out of the formal economy, out of the formal sector. So you have a lot of semi-proletariat, a lot of lumpen elements that are alienated from formal production. So the proletariat is a very, very small number in comparison to the other classes that are also toiling and oppressed. Yes, but even in this case, the proletariat, it is the party of the working class. So the working class must lead. So the party will indeed focus on the urban areas in as much as it has a lot of successes in the rural setting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you brought up the IMF and ahead of my research, I knew somewhat about the IMF and the role the IMF plays in sort of the global South, predominantly, and the power that the Western countries like the U.S. and some European countries have on the IMF, and sort of it as a neo-colonial economic tool, and it has a long history in Kenya, from what I read. So how do you see the role of the IMF in the way that Kenya's economy is shaped today?
Of course, we when we talk about now the IMF, the World Bank, and all of these other lending institutions, including direct foreign governments, you also have to understand their history. The IMF and World Bank are synonymous with the structural adjustment programs. I believe after the successes of the national liberation movements, especially in Africa in the 60s and 70s, and now the ushering in of neo-colonialism, which was preceded by direct colonialism. Now, these former colonies still have to dominate these former colonizing countries still have to dominate their former colonies economically uh, through banking, finance. So that is when they start to draw up the structural adjustment programs, which they were very, very, very punitive because in the context of my country, particularly in 63, a very unpopular structural adjustment program was brought to Parliament. It was called the Sessional Paper Number 10. What it did back then was to privatize a lot of state-owned parastatals and companies. Yes, so basically the privatization, what it did, reduced the minimum wage and pushed a lot of people out of employment. So now, at a very shallow level, that's the historical development of the role that these financial lenders are playing in the economies of the peripheral countries, and in my context, Kenya. I believe today they play an even important role for imperialism because they use, of course, they use debt as leverage, and they funk they I feel like I'm going in circles because like I realize I'm saying the same thing over and over again. But in essence, they're the economic arm of the imperialist bourgeoisie, and they're mediated by the comprador and bureaucratic class in the country. So you find that um, the sweat of the Kenyan workers and the peasants is funneled into the vaults of American and European capital as now super profits. So their role is indeed the extraction of super profits from the sweat of Kenyan workers and into the vaults of their capitals. They do this through, of course, they impose a lot of conditionalities when they lend money. Now, I think this one requires its own dedicated call. Sure, and I think I need to prepare a very coherent a very coherent paper regarding this because I feel like I'm going in circles.
No, it's okay. But I understand your point. You know, I mean, it relates to all the history that we've been talking about. I mean, it's all, you know, connected. It's a tool of neo-colonialism, IMF and World Bank. You know, so.
Actually, oh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. Actually, I think that it is even the main force. You know, it is the main force because it is the a very covert aspect of imperialist domination.
Mm.
Boots on the ground is a very overt and
Yeah.
instrument of coercion. But the IMF and the World Bank, they're the silent compulsion of economic relations.
Mm-hmm.
It is a silent compulsion that is hidden in plain sight. So it is the primary mode by which neocolonialism is sustained.
Yeah. No, I get that. Economics in general are always, you know, very elusive and hard to understand for your average person, your average working class person on purpose, um, because it robs your average person of sort of an understanding, but also power in economics and all that. It happens in my country, it happens all over the world, and that's why I think socialists, communists, put a lot of emphasis on the economics because it's like the basis of everything. It underlines the politics, it underlines the culture. At least how I understand it. But
Yeah, the economic base of society will always shape the superstructure and every other relation.
yeah, I wanted to ask also about because I didn't read stories on it, but I saw some links to the Kenyan military, some personnel being sent to Haiti. Um, do you know anything about that?
Yes, I've protested that in the streets
Okay.
a lot. Um, uh, it, when we started this call, we were talking about the how Kenya situates itself geopolitically,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it was consensus that Kenya is a satellite client of American imperialism. So the mission to Haiti, it's very characteristic of Kenya being a garrison state for imperialism. Only that in this case, it's not within the region. It's surprisingly far away in the Caribbean.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it is. I think that this tactic is one of the oldest tricks in the books, where you, like for example, as a juxtaposition, in the colonization of Kenya, the the British imperialists used a lot of indigenous uh, black personnel in their ranks as police officers and as soldiers. They were called the King's African Rifle. Now, the King's African Rifle, the original battalions in Kenya for the King's African Rifle were not actually Kenyans, but they were black, very black like myself. They were from Sudan,
Mm.
Nubians from Sudan. Uh, so I think in the current geopolitical context, it suits American imperialism more to have black boots on the ground than the actual boots on the ground to do the dirty work for them.
Mm-hmm.
And Kenya being the running dog suits that role very well. And it was actually the Kenyan police, not the Kenyan military, but
Oh.
it's essentially the same instrument of state violence and coercion.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, but the National Police Service is very inept. We see that they're murdered every day in Haiti.
Mm-hmm.
They're meeting the deserved fates in Haiti. Yes, so it is a it is a phenomena that is the relationship between Kenya and imperialism. Sometimes it's I don't want to say difficult for me to understand because I understand it, but how to describe it because it's Kenya is a new colony, but it is sometimes elevated to, of course, because it's their client, to do their bidding in the region, and in this case, very far away in the Caribbean. So you get the impression that it is elevated to some higher status.
I think I lost you.
I'm so sorry. I think it's my internet. Can you
Okay.
remember where I cut out? Like, what was I saying before I cut out?
No, just how Kenya's used as a garrison state, an arm of things like that. Because we were talking about Haiti and.
Ah, yes. So essentially, that's the historical role that Kenya fulfills for not only American imperialism but also uh, Israeli imperialism, which is just American imperialism, and also British imperialism, which in essence is still it's very much close tied to American imperialism. So yes, that's the role that Kenya fulfills. Uh, it's a garrison state not only in the context of the East, of, in the context of East Africa, but as we've seen with Haiti, Kenya can be used by imperialism to serve their interests globally, which comes as no shock.
So you said that you were part of protesting against the Kenyan police being sent and used against Haiti. When you protest and for these sorts of causes, do you see that pressure sort of shaping any politicians' platforms at all? Do you feel like the pressure has been enough to shape some sort of some political results?
Yeah, of course, you can see the pressure, but sometimes you can see the pressure, but it's not enough in some cases to make the politicians or the state in this matter yield. The pressure is there, but the state has not yielded to the pressure because the mission to Haiti is still ongoing. Because it's practice that is the highest criterion of truth. Even if we say that they're yielding to oppression and the mission to Haiti is still ongoing, in true sense, they've not yielded. We can just say that the pressure is there, but it has not reached to a point that will, will shape policy yet. I think it's similar to the anti-war movement in your country, because I understand that majority of people in your country are against the military aggression against the sovereignty of Iran and Lebanon, and also Palestine, and also Cuba.
Yeah.
But the fascist government still persists. Yeah.
No, yeah, 100%. How do you see the relationship between the CPM-K and other sort of socialist or communist parties or organizations within Africa? Is there a relationship? Is it a growing relationship?
Um, with other parties in Africa, we have, I even dare say, a great friendship, a fraternal friendship between our organizations. And I think more so with the South African Communist Party, I know that we have a very great friendship. With the Socialist Party of Zambia, with the Communist League of Uganda, um, with our comrades in Benin, with our comrades in Tunisia, Algeria. Yes, we have a lot of relationships with comrades all across the continent, and the relationships keep growing because progressive movements keep keep arising as an antithesis to the as an as a direct antithesis to the political situation in their respective countries. Progressive organization will always arise, and we always try to have a good relationship with them.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Have you heard of the man named Fadel Kaboub? He's from Tunisia. He's a economist focused on like economic sovereignty in the global south.
Um, Unfortunately, no, I haven't, but I am very much interested to read their works and
Yeah,
even to read them.
I'll send you a link to his work because he does. I mean, everything that I've heard him advocate for is aligned with the ideas that we're talking about today, in my opinion, and I think he's based here in the U.S., but he travels all over, and his organization, what is it called? Global South Perspectives. But yeah, if you haven't heard about him, I'll just send you a link and maybe you check him
I'll
out.
just type it in the chat so that I remember Global South Perspectives.
Yeah. So what are some other things going on in Kenya right now that maybe people in my audience and the U.S. audience are not aware of?
Did I by any chance mention about the uh, French imperialism um, being in league with our government? Because it's a new phenomenon that is developing after they were kicked out of the Sahel. Did I by any chance mention that?
No, just in passing. Not we didn't detail it. We didn't talk about it in depth.
Ah, yes. So the the French bourgeoisie through the state usually has this. I think they call it the Africa Summit. They usually hold it in either Paris or the previously. Um, I use this word because for the purposes of understanding, I hate to use it. The francophone countries of Africa, their capitals.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but as we all know, the French have been kicked out of the Sahel by the revolutionary governments in Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali, and so they're trying to reshape their alliances because um, there are declining. Um, should I say there are? They're an empire that is dying, basically. So, as a means to reshape the alliances, they're going to have the Africa Summit being held in Nairobi. I reckon it will be in this year, but I'm not sure. I have to confirm that. But I reckon it will be this year. It will be held in the capital. So, we have three French warships that have docked at a coastal city in Mombasa, and we have, I think, between 800 to 1200 French boots on the ground. And there's a bill in Parliament currently that will grant them immunity, given that it passes, it's ratified and assented into law. So that's a new phenomenon that is developing. What else? I don't think there's anything new other than what we've just talked about, be it Kenya's involvement with the RSF, Kenya's involvement with the Israelis and the IDF, Kenya's involvement in the Balkanization of Somalia, um, with the involvement in Haiti, um, the alliance with with Rwanda and the involvement in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Uh, yeah, so I think nothing will be new because we've discussed most of this in other adjacent topics similar to this one conversation.
Well, in regards to the Kenyan, you know, so, well, what is the relationship between Kenya and the RSF? Like, what is it helping the RSF out with? Is supplying people, supplying weapons, information?
Supplying, mainly it is the supply of weapons. Um, the supply of weapons, the money route, um, because they have a lot of. So they have their. So Nairobi, our capital, where I'm at right now, it's the safe haven for a safe and their finances. So Kenya also gives them safe passage for the gold trade, the illegal gold trade, because it is the illegal gold trade that funds their their war machine. Yes. And I also mentioned that Kenya hosted the leadership of RSF. Uh, that guy, Hemedi Dagalo, and his delegation in Nairobi. So they were here and they even declared a parallel government to the Sudanese government. And they've even been given Kenyan passports.
Well, what is the relationship between Kenya and China, if there is one?
Ah, yes, there is. The ruling party, you know, um, uh, the CPC positions itself to. We have to look at how the CPC positions itself strategically. Of course, the analysis of comrades, say for example, in the CPP, the NDFP or comrades in the Philippines, they don't shy away from the idea that the current PRC is an imperialist entity. So we also have to look at how the CPT positions itself with the governments of the countries in the periphery, because we see that they try to foster a good relationship. Of course, that is contingent on them uh, having economic leverage over 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 the unipolar hegemony of American imperialism. So the CPC and the PRC does have a good relationship with the ruling government of the day. Yes, but from our perspective, how we see them as a lesser contradiction, a secondary one, because strategically they are hastening the the, the, um, the decline of the unipolar hegemony of America. So, for all purposes, I think the positioning of the CPC strategically is to the advantage of the global south, especially in the sense of multipolarity. Yeah.
Have you seen at all, and I haven't seen, but maybe, I mean, you're more plugged into it. Is China at all invested in sort of these resource wars in any capacity, or they're just trying to do economic trade with Kenya?
Yeah, there's investment even in infrastructure. Now, regarding the trade wars, I don't know if I can comment on that because there's oh sorry, you've used the word resource wars.
Resource, yeah.
Sorry, what do you mean by resource wars?
Well, I mean, in terms of, let's say, the attack by the U.S. and Israel on Iran, in my estimation, is to get a friendly government in order to, have access to all the resources that Iran has in their country, as well as, a friendly, a capitalist country, through and through, that is pro-Western hegemony and not doing business with China or some other imperial powers.
Um, I don't know how to answer that question, but I try to look at it not in a moralistic sense, because I think if we do that, we lose sight of the terrain of struggle. Um, I'm struggling a lot with that question.
Well, maybe because it was a bad question.
No, no,
It
no, no, no,
wasn't. It wasn't phrased that well.
no. I'm just thinking hard. I'm just thinking hard because okay, maybe you could rephrase it in bits so that we break it down that we tackle.
Mm-hmm. Well, like I told you, I'm not too plugged into the say, for example, the genocide that is happening in Sudan and the UAE. I know that the UAE plays a big role, and also the Americans and the Israelis do a lot of the supplying of arms and but isn't that what they call conflict? Is uh, for resources in Sudan, right? For resources for the UAE and for America and Israel and so on. So that's what I mean by resource war. And if and my question would be, do you see China sort of trying to come into African countries and playing a similar role as American imperialists do,
Um,
stoking
I don't know.
violence?
Yeah, now I think I understand you. I don't want to say yes, because even if I say yes, it's a different kind of yes.
Mm-hmm.
But it is still, in essence, in form and substance, imperialist extraction.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Chinese state also and their companies, their interests are very objective. They're objective interests. They are not sacrosanct in any way, because um, I've seen this argument being made a lot of times that the CPC is in a way positioning itself such that it engages in capitalist development in the periphery, so that you have now a big proletariat, so that the now big proletariat can carry revolution against their own national bourgeoisie and bring about socialist revolution. And they say that's a form of internationalism. But I think that's fantasy, because it ignores the agency of the colonized subject, and it even looks this rhetoric looks at the colonized subjects not as real historical subjects, fully conscious of the historical role, but as objects for revolution. I don't know if that makes sense. So I indeed think that the Chinese also engage in imperialist resource extraction, but of course it's not similar. And this is not absolving them or trying to speak about them in a good light, but it is objectively not similar with what the American imperialists are doing, not even by a stretch. It's not similar. It's is it extraction? Yes, but is it primary? It's not. It's American imperialism that is primary.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that extraction by Chinese companies shouldn't be called out.
Yeah. No, I get you. I get you. Um, so I was reading about the Nandi Resistance,
Yeah.
and also a little bit about the Mau Mau Rebellion. Um, and I found it to be very, very interesting histories, both of those periods in history. Um, can you tell my audience a little bit more about what you know about the Mau Mau rebellion, the Nandi resistance?
Yeah. So I'll start with the Nandi Resistance, but I'll be very brief. In the historical development of nation states, a nation is usually formed when the invading force has say for example, a superior mode of production. So people in the invaded region, out of necessity, have to come together to fight off the invading force. Now, the Kalenjin, in the context of the 1700 and 1800s Kenya, the Kalenjin was a nation in itself, the Kalenjin tribe.
Mm.
Uh, so the resistance is in the context of the Kalenjin nation in that historical period, and also in the context of now the creation of Kenya, because the resistance formed part of the collective resistance against British colonialism. It was a very brave, it was a very brave act of resistance that was, of course, um, don't want to use the word defeated, but they were subjugated. And they had a very great leader. He was called Koitalel Arap Samoei.
Mm.
He was murdered in a cowardly fashion by some British fascists
Mm-hmm.
called Minot Zagen. Now to the Momo Rebellion. The original name of the Mau Mau was the Kenya Land and Freedom Army. The Kenya Land and Freedom Army was not an independent organization. It was the military wing of the more progressive and revolutionary faction of a political party called COW. COW is an abbreviation for the Kenya African Union. So the Kenyan African Union had members like Bildad Kagia. He's known today as a very revolutionary trade unionist.
Mm-hmm.
A member called Fred Kubai, uh, a member called Piogama Pinto. He was of Goan origin. From that region, the Indian Catholics of Goa. So he was of Goan origin. So what they did, this more revolutionary faction of COW, they constituted a Politburo that declared that the only way that Kenya could attain its independence was through armed struggle. So in essence, it was very similar to how the FLN, no, members of the FLN in Algeria, some of them participated in, because some of them were conscripted by the French military and participated in the war campaign, in the aggression against Vietnamese sovereignty. But now they got their consciousness about freedom during that war because they were fighting on the side of the oppressor. When they came back to Algeria, they formed the FLN and even now started to resist against the French. So the initial fighters of the Kenya Land and Freedom Army, most of them fought in either the First and the Second World War. So when they came back, they could see that a people could fight to liberate their homeland.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the objective conditions necessitated that armed struggle is the only path towards liberation. Of course, in the urban centers, there was a lot of trade union activity, a very radical trade union activity that supported the armed struggle. Now, the Kenya Land and Freedom Army was a resistance that started mainly in the central region of Kenya, because the British, what they did at the time, they put the entire population of that region into concentration camps.
Mm.
So they were basically gulags, very, very bad concentration camps.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of torture, rape, murders going on there. So it was out of necessity that armed struggle was the only solution to counter this aggression by the British.
Mm-hmm.
So the name Mau Mau was not the original name. The name Mau Mau was used as a propaganda name by the British fascists, meant to be a pejorative to make the resistance appear in a bad light, but it was appropriated by the resistance and it now carried a more positive connotation.
Oh, okay.
So the first military actions, I believe they started in 1952, I believe. I believe they started in 1952. And the most prominent leader of the Mau Mau was the heroic martyr Field Marshal Dedan Kimathi, who was, after years of struggle, was elected not only as the Supreme Field Commander, but also the overall leader of the Kenya Defense Council. So he was effectively the first Prime Minister of Kenya. But unfortunately, he was captured and assassinated. He was hanged by the neck until death by the British fascists before we could attain independence. And I think that was in February 18th, 1956, if I'm not wrong. Yes. So it was the struggle of the Kenya Land and Freedom Army that culminated into the independence of our country in 1963.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very, very heroic struggle against British colonialism.
All right, Sibi, I know you gotta go. I really appreciate your time talking to me. It was really nice you reaching out through our friend, our comrade, and I'd love to talk again. Whenever you want to talk, I'm willing to talk. All right, Sibi, you have any final words or?
Of course, yes. Death to Yankee imperialism, victory for the oppressed of the world, victory for the Iranian people, victory for our comrades in Palestine, in the occupied territories in the West Bank and in the besieged enclave in the Gaza Strip. Death to Zionism, death to Kaitama, death to Ben Gavir, death to Yoav Gallant, death to Marco Rubio, death to what's the name of this guy?
Hegseth, yeah.
Death to the fascist Orange Man, and victory for the oppressed peoples of the world.
This my rifle, this my gun.
This my rifle, this my gun.
This for fight and this for war.
This for fight and this for war.
If I die in the battlefield,
If I die in the battlefield,
tell Karl Marx that I did my best.
tell Karl Marx that I did my
I
best.
said tell Karl Marx that I did my best.